our 6th day of Unit 10, we're going to start talking about the equations of circles. Now, this stuff is really pretty cool because before today, when you graphed something on a graph, it was always a function, an input and output. It passed the vertical line test. But these circles are not going to pass the vertical line test. So we're actually going to be creating relations between points instead of functions. But we can graph a circle on a coordinate grid, and that's what we're going to be working on today. So remember, the definition of a circle is all the points in a plane that are equidistant from a given point. We kind of glossed over this definition before, but this idea of being equidistant from a given point, it's all a distance of the radius away from the circle, which means the radius is really important for the equation of a circle. In fact, the radius, which if you remember is defined to be a segment with endpoints at the center and at any point on the circle, let's go ahead and highlight the radius here, can be found for the circle when you're given the center and you're given any point on the line or on the circle. It comes from Pythagorean theorem, and I put a little bubble around this already for you. But if you are given the center of the circle and one of the coordinate points around the center of the circle, you can use the distance formula / Pythagorean theorem to find the distance of that radius. So we've got the clouded formula that we'll probably use later. But before we do that, let's just talk about the standard equation of a circle. We're going to let xy represent any point on the circle with a center of HK. I want you to highlight the words center and HK in a particular color that you'll stick with all day. And I also want you to highlight that radius is R. And we're going to do that in the same color that we highlighted the radius with earlier, which for me is red. Now, these formulas here looks kind of complicated, but all you're going to do with this formula is you're going to take the blue H and K value and you're going to plug them in where H and K are listed in the formula. And you're going to take the red radius value and you're going to plug it in where the radius goes. So it's like filling in any sort of formula that we've done before. This formula for a circle is just a relation between x and y that makes all the points equidistant to the center. That formula is, and we'll put a little cloud, I know I clouded it for you, but we can add a colorful cloud here. This is the formula we're going to use all day. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equal to r squared. The x and y stay in the problem. The h and the k are the center point, and the r is the radius. All we have to do is plug those numbers in to get the equations of these circles. So if we see an example here, you've got the steps there, but I'll walk you through it. Number 1 says we're going to write the equation of a circle with a center at 0, 0. So I highlight these numbers in blue because for me that's the center's colors. H will be 0, K will be 0. And it says that the radius is 1/3. So I'm going to highlight that one red. I also labeled it because I think that's helpful too when you don't have the colors so you know exactly where these are going. So if you look at the formula, that's the purple formula. All I did was take the H and put a 0, take the K and put a 0, and then take the R and put the 1/3 right there. So I've just filled it in, yeah? After you fill it in, the last step is to simplify. Does it matter to subtract or add 0 from a number? So x minus 0, isn't that still just x? And then y minus 0, isn't that still just y? So we do simplify this down. And then we do 1/3 squared. So there's a squared button on your calculator if you need it, but you could square the top, square the bottom. 1 squared is 1, 3 squared is 9. That becomes 1/9. And that is the equation of the circle that would have a center at the origin 0, 0 and a radius of 1/3. It's a tiny, tiny little circle. Let me answer the phone. Okay, number 2, a circle with center at -3 and -5 and a diameter of 16. So here's the things I know. Since this is the center, I'm going to highlight it my center colors. -3, -5 is H and is K. Now, it says that the diameter is 16. If the diameter is 16, what is the radius? 8, half of that. So don't automatically think the other number in the problem is your radius. Make sure you read that it is the radius. And if it's the diameter, just do half of it. So I fill in my formula. Wherever there was an h, I put -3. Wherever there's a k, I put -5. The step for simplifying here means that I'm actually going to do negative. What happens when you minus a negative? Changes to positive. Minus a minus is plus. Yes? Again here, minus a minus is plus. Ooh, I just saw a typo. Can y'all fix that for me? This should be squared. And then I do 8 squared in my brain and my calculator, and I get 64. Oh, I forgot to highlight it red. And voila, this is the answer. So the answers look really complicated. The simplifying step of writing an equation of a circle is usually just the minus a minus or squaring the radius. So it's really pretty simple. Okay. Now I've left this one for us to partially do. This time I didn't give you in words what the center and what the radius is, but it's really obvious from the picture what that is. For this circle that we have in number 3, where is the center of the circle? Kind of looks like it's right here, yeah? What is that coordinate point? 0, 0. Okay, now we need the radius. We, on a graph, can just count the radius. So look at the horizontal distance between the center and the edge of the circle. How many steps did that take? Oh, 4 steps, but we're counting by what's? If this is 4, how much is this one? 8. So look at your units just in case it's weird. So yes, 4 boxes, but they're 2 each. So my radius is what? 8, because that's the distance from the center out to the circle. So we fill it in. What do I put right here? 0, because that's h. What do I put in the next blank? 0, because that's k. And what do I put in the last blank? 8. We just have to simplify here. What's x minus 0? What? It's just x. What's y minus 0? Just y. And what's 8 squared? 64. So x squared plus y squared equal to 64 is the equation for this circle. It's centered at the origin and has a radius of 8. So this is the kind of things you're going to need to think about to do problem number 4. For problem number 4, I didn't write anything on it, so I want you to be able to do the same thing. In number 3, what was the first thing I found? The center. What is the center of this circle? Visually, it's like right here, yeah? What's that coordinate point? 2, 2. Very good. The other thing I need is the radius. So I go from the center directly to the side, or directly up, or directly down, one of the ordinary directions, I guess I would say, like a compass. How far did I travel from the center to the edge of that circle? 4, because I went from 2 to 6. So that's 4. We have to fill this into the formula. The formula is x minus what? 2. Close parentheses squared plus y minus 2. Close parentheses squared. All of that equal to what? 4 squared. We have to square all of these terms. So the x parentheses gets squared, the y parentheses get squared, the radius gets squared. The only simplifying I have in this problem, because I don't see minus a minus inside these parentheses here, I just have to square the 4, which means the answer to this, the equation of this circle, is x minus 2 squared plus y minus 2 squared equal to 16. I just squared 4. We write that up here in the nice little blank that we left you. X minus 2 squared plus y minus 2 squared equal to 16. Yes?
How'd you get the radius?
Great question. How did I get the radius? So we have to identify the center of the circle first, and then I just need to know the distance from this point out to the side of the circle, directly sideways so that we can count it on the graph. And so I counted on this one. I said this is 2, this is 3, 4, 5, 6. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces that I jumped. Like I just counted. Yeah. The only thing that could get weird about counting is if your axis is not counting by ones. You need to make sure you're noticing actually how far you travel, not just the boxes. This one counts by ones, so it's easy. Okay, before we keep going, questions, comments, concerns on writing the equation of the circle. This is the bulk of what I need us to be able to do today, taking a center and a radius and plugging it into the formula. Do we feel okay doing that? Fabulous. Now we do need to also be able to kind of solve some problems when it comes to circles, which is like what's going to happen down here at the bottom. If it asks you to find the radius, meaning it doesn't give you the radius and it doesn't give you a picture, we can't just count to find the radius anymore. We're going to have to solve for the radius. So I've done this one for you so you have a nice example to look at, and then I've given you some training wheels on the next one. The question says the center is at 0, 0. So that'll be my blue equation by my blue numbers, h and k. And a point on the circle is 4, negative 3. That's not my radius. That's just a random x and y that's on my circle. This equation I have here that's solved for the radius is what we wrote at the top of the paper. So this is the formula to find the radius. All I need to do here is plug in those blue numbers I got for h and for k. And then I'll use the x and the y value as x and y. So we are actually changing x and y in this question. We didn't change it when we wrote an equation, but we changed them to the numbers we have when we're finding the radius. So if we see how I've plugged this in, we have x is 4 minus h, 0. Y is negative 3 minus k, which is 0. That's all numbers. So TBH, you could take this part right here that we just wrote down, throw it in a calculator. If you get a nice pretty number like 5, you're done. If you don't get a nice pretty number, you go back and you just delete the square root so you can see what number belongs underneath the square root, because you'd get a decimal value a couple times, and I'd prefer the unsimplified radical for this class. So again, I showed my work on doing this by hand, but this entirely is numbers. Throw it in a calculator, you would get 5. So now that I have the radius, which is what I was solving for, I can take the h, the k, and that radius and put it into the regular equation to write the equation of the circle. Can we do number 6 together? We've got a nice example worked out here. We're going to find the radius, then we're going to use it to write the equation. All right, I've set it up for you. Let's first highlight, maybe label the center. That's my blue. That's going to be h and k. And my coordinate point, which is x and y. That way they match the exact equation that I'm going to be using. So what number do I put here? Oh, look, it's the very first thing. It says x. What number do we have labeled as x? 8. So you're going to put an 8 right there. Then I put h, which is 5. So we're going to do 8 minus 5 squared. Plus, what number should go here? 7 minus what? 6. Okay, calculator moment. I need you to take all of that, because look, there is no numbers or no letters left in this equation, just numbers. So you do a giant square root, parentheses 8 minus 5 squared plus parentheses 7 minus 6 squared. Or you do it in your head. You do it in your head. When you do this one, you should get a decimal number, yes? Yes. So I want you to go back, retype everything, or just like go, you know how you can scroll up, press enter so it retypes it, then go to the very, very front and just delete the square root. So highlight it and press enter. It retypes it for you, and then scroll to the very front and you press the delete button over the square root. So delete as DEL. Press enter. So you should get 10. That should be a minus right there. That's okay. You should get 10. So the answer I want is that the square root of 10 is my radius. Okay, we're going to leave it as square root of 10, not use that decimal. We're going to go back to the unsimplified radical because that will be helpful with what we want. Because our end goal here is to write the equation of the circle. So I go back to the regular equation we used at the problems above this and I fill it in. What number should go here? Should be the same number that went second in the parentheses just a second ago. 5, because that's H. What number should go here next to Y? Or subtracted from Y? 6. And then what number goes over here? Ooh, not just 10. The whole thing, square root 10. Because that's what we found to be the radius. And yes, it looks complicated, but it's going to be really easy here in a second. There's nothing I need to really simplify about this because there's no negative negatives inside my parentheses. So all I need to do is in my calculator to do square root of 10 squared. But honestly, think about it for a second. If you square a square root, what's going to happen? They cancel out. So this whole thing is going to be x minus 5 squared plus y minus 6 squared equal to what? If the square root and the square cancel, what's there? Just a straight 10. This is what you would get if you squared the square root in your calculator. But if you recognize that those are inverse operations, they cancel each other out, the 10 just like pops out. Okay, so we have written the equations of the lines. The last thing that we're going to work on in this class is graphing a circle given some pieces of information. Now, graphing a circle is personally hard for me because I don't draw very good. So my circles always look wonky. Please try to make your circles as nice as possible. But we already see on the back that my circle was a little bit wonky. Not my strength, I'll be honest with you. This says we're going to find the center and radius of the circle, and then we're going to graph the circle. Okay. So if I see this equation right here, I know that the center of the circle, I get the 2 coordinate points from the number subtracted from x and the number subtracted from y. Is there a number subtracted from x? No, so what number is subtracted from x? Not 1. If there's nothing subtracted from x, what number is nothing? 0. So this is just like writing x minus 0. So my center point is going to be at 0, comma, nothing is there, also 0, which is this point right here. So I put the center of my circle at 0. Again, maybe this will be helpful to see. This is x minus 0 minus nothing squared plus y minus nothing, because it's just y, equal to, and then I need the radius. The radius is the square root of this number. So I have to do the square root of 36. Well, the square root of 36 is 6. I showed my work here. So that means for me to draw this circle, I go from the center and I count over 6 units in 4 directions. I counted over 6 units this direction and put a dot. I counted over 6 units down, 6 units to the left, and 6 units up, so that I have 4 really good points, up, down, left, and right. Once you've done that, that's when you draw your circle, and this is when I don't do a very good job because I'm not a good artist, but you draw a circle that probably looks better than mine, hopefully. Okay? I like to do a couple circles around it with a really light pencil so that it looks as circular as possible. Be better than me. Okay, so let's see an example that we're going to do all together. In this problem, we need to figure out the center and we need to figure out the radius from the equation. I'm going to find the centers by looking at these numbers. What is the x coordinate of the center? What's the blue number next to the x value here, subtracted from the x value? 3. So my center has an x coordinate of 3. Wild guess, what's the y coordinate of the center? Thank you for saying 2. Do you notice something that's different about this compared to this one? It's positive. Earlier, when we had a positive in our answer, wasn't it because we did a negative negative? Yes, so the number that I plugged in here is actually -2. Should be the opposite of what's in there. So if my center says x minus 3, that means it's at positive 3. If it says y plus 2, it's at -2. So it's the opposite of the sign you see in the parentheses because the equation has a negative in it already. So my center is going to be at 3, -2. So I count over 1, 2, 3, and down 2. Ooh, this graph did not print very well for you guys, but that is 3, -2. Then we just need the radius. In the problem right before this, how did I find the radius? I took the number that was in the equation, and what did I do to it to find the radius? Square root. Okay, so what is our number in the equation? 16. What's the square root of 16? 4. So we're going to go from the center, and we're going to count 4 steps left, right, up, and down so that we can make a nice circle. So I go 1, 2, let me show you what I'm doing here. I go 1, 2, 3, 4 this direction. I go 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoa. Gosh, this printed so poorly. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then up 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, this is really not a good print for you guys. I should have pressed the darker. Oh, it's better on your copy than on mine. And once we have it here, you do draw. Did I make one too big? Yeah, that looks weird. There we go. Oh, wrong color. Then you draw your circle, which again is not my strength. So you be better than me. Boom, but we have our circle. Oh my gosh. Embarrassing. Is that right? Okay. Let's try this again. All right. Still not great, but I know my strengths, and it's not drawing circles. Yeah, all my artists will have nice circles, and the rest of us will do our best. Okay, now if you notice at the bottom of this page, I filled in everything. For most of us, I'm not worried about us being able to write an equation by completing the square, but those of you going into honors classes, it's an expectation, especially for pre-cal, that you do know how to do this. If you would like for me to go over how to do this with you because you're moving on to honors courses, let me know and I will. Otherwise, that information is just there for you to follow. I think I've made it pretty clear what we're doing each time. But for the majority of us, I'm not that worried about it. I would rather spend our time working on other concepts. Yes? Those other concepts are really going to focus on writing equations of lines when I give you the center and I give you the radius, which is from the front of the page. So everybody flip your paper over, and I'm going to hand out your classwork activity for today. So for completing the square, basically what's going to happen is you're going to be given an equation with x squared's terms, y squared's terms, x's, y's, and regular numbers. The first thing you do is you move the regular number to the other side. So this one said +9. When I move it over, what should it say now? -9. When I set this up, I always do the x terms together with a box, the y terms next to each other with a circle. I put the box on this side, I put the box over here. I put a circle on this side, I put a circle over here. Our first job is to decide what goes in the box. How we figure out what goes in the box is this. B in a quadratic is always the number next to x. So I do b, -8, divide by 2, squared.
That's the first
8
part.
divided by, negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. Squared makes 16. The number
Yeah,
you
okay.
get goes in the box.
You need to grab-
If it goes over
grab
here,
one,
it also goes over here.
the big one, the little one.
I do the same thing here. So I take the b term. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Square it is 9. 9 goes in the circle. 9 goes in the circle.
How'd you get 2? Is it because the y is squared?
This 2,
Yeah.
it's part of the formula. This is just something you have to remember to do completing the square.
Oh.
B divided by 2 squared. So now you have a number in the box. You have a number in the circle. We factor these quadratics. They're technically perfect squares, which is why we do this. The number you're going to plug in comes from here. This is why we show our work. The number before the box number drops down to the factor. That looks like what we did earlier, right? From the parentheses drops down. This number comes from actually adding all of these. Negative 9 plus 16 plus 9 is 16. I'm almost done. I just have to clean this up. What's minus a minus?
Positive.
Boom. I've done the writing of the equation of the circle.
Okay.
Does that make sense?